Hello there. My name is Elijah, and I'm a man who has always believed in hard work and loyalty. I spent years building a life for myself and my former spouse only to have it all crumble in the end. This is a tale of how I reclaimed my dignity and my freedom. It all started in a cold courtroom in Boston. The courtroom was freezing far too cold for the situation I was in. The judge's gavel had just fallen when my wife, who was soon to be my ex-wife, sat back in her chair with a confident smirk as if she had already won. She crossed her legs with exaggerated certainty, her expensive Christian Louboutin heels lightly tapping the polished floor. "Your Honor," she purred, brushing a perfectly manicured fingernail against her cheek. "Let's be frank here, my husband is like a workhorse, reliable, predictable, and very, very easy to ride." A few murmurs swept through the room, some gasps and a stifled laugh from her lawyer. The judge barely raised an eyebrow before striking his gavel to quiet everyone. I gritted my teeth, but I didn't react, not yet. She was putting on a spectacle, and I wouldn't give her the joy of seeing me lose my cool. The divorce was her idea naturally after 9 years of marriage. She had decided I wasn't enough for her anymore. I wasn't exciting enough, not the man she thought she deserved. But instead of leaving with grace, she had dragged me into this court, determined to humiliate me on her way out. She had already gotten the house, the one I had built with my own hands. She had fought relentlessly for half of my business, even though she had contributed nothing to it. And now, in this final proceeding, she was still twisting the knife. Her new boyfriend sat in the back row watching with detached amusement. He was a corporate lawyer, polished and self-assured. Everything she had convinced herself she wanted. She hadn't even tried to be subtle about it. I had found them months ago in our own bed, wrapped in sheets I had paid for. But I wasn't going to break down, because what she didn't know was that this trial was not the end, it was just the beginning. Her lawyer, a smug man in a costly suit, rose to his feet and adjusted his tie. "Your Honor, my client simply wants to voice her concerns regarding Mr. Elijah's capacity to provide long-term alimony. She made significant sacrifices while married to him, and she merits fair compensation for those years." Sacrifices, I thought. The judge peered over his glasses at me. "Mr. Elijah, do you have a response?" I took a slow breath, gripping the edge of the table. This was my moment. Slowly and purposefully, I reached up and unbuttoned my dress shirt. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge tilted his head, clearly intrigued by what I was doing. I took my time. I wanted every second to extend. One by one, I undid the buttons, then shrugged off the shirt completely, and that's when the gasps began. Even Ella's smirk disappeared. Her boyfriend's amused look turned into something else, something like apprehension, because standing there, in the cold air of the courtroom, I was unrecognizable from the man my wife had been ridiculing. The last time she had truly looked at me, I had been soft, complacent, a man who had spent too many years toiling, providing, sacrificing, but not caring for himself. I had been easy to disregard, easy to cheat on, but the man standing before them now was broad, powerful, completely changed. I had spent months preparing for this, hours at the fitness center training, constantly pushing my body, until the pain became a close friend. The weight I had once carried in stress and exhaustion had been replaced with lean, disciplined muscle. Scars marked my chest, the kind you don't get from an easy existence, and most importantly, right over my heart, I had gotten a tattoo. The ink was new enough that the colors were still settling, but it was bold and deliberate, a workhorse breaking free of its chains. The symbolism was obvious to everyone, especially my wife. She was staring, her eyes wide, her mouth slightly open. Her lawyer quickly recovered. "Your Honor, I fail to see how this is relevant to—" I interrupted him, my voice calm, steady, but as cold as steel. "You want to talk about sacrifices?" I turned to the judge. "For 9 years I gave everything to this marriage. I worked overtime so she could quit her job and discover herself, paid for her shopping sprees, her expensive trips, her cosmetic procedures. I even put her name on my business, thinking we were a team." I shifted my gaze back to my wife, watching the color drain from her face. "And how did she repay me?" I motioned toward the man in the back row. A few murmurs swept through the courtroom. Again, her lawyer attempted to object, but the judge held up a hand. "Let him speak." I nodded in thanks before continuing. "You called me a workhorse, huh?" My lips curled into a slow, deliberate smirk. "That's funny, because this workhorse is about to run right over you." Her expression twisted. Panic flickered in her eyes. I reached down, grabbing a thick manila envelope from my chair. It slammed onto the table with a loud thud. "Inside this file," I said, my voice ringing clearly, "are documents proving You have been committing financial fraud, hiding money, claiming expenses from my business that had nothing to do with you. Her mouth opened, then shut, then opened again, and because of that, I continued, I'm not only taking your alimony request off the table, I'm suing you for damages. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Her lawyer fumbled to flip through his notes while she sat frozen. Her perfectly rehearsed confidence shattered for the first time in months. I saw something new in her eyes, not arrogance, not amusement, but fear, and we weren't even finished yet. Because the best part, this was only the start. The force of my words still hung heavy in the air. My soon-to-be ex-wife sat frozen, her nails digging into the polished wood of the defense table, her carefully crafted mask of arrogance beginning to crack. The confident, dismissive smirk she had worn moments ago had been replaced with something far more gratifying: panic. Her lawyer, no longer smirking either, shuffled through his papers, clearly unprepared for the storm I had just unleashed. Your Honor? He stammered, adjusting his tie. I'd like to request a short recess so we can review these supposed... The judge held up a hand, silencing him. Not yet. His sharp gaze turned to me. Mr. Elijah, you're saying you have proof that Mrs. Ella committed financial fraud?
I nodded, keeping my posture calm and poised even though I could feel
my heart pounding in my chest. Yes, Your Honor, concrete proof. And with that, I opened the manila envelope, revealing page after page of bank transfers, falsified business expense reports, and hidden credit card statements, all under my wife's name. It had taken months to assemble this. When I first discovered she was cheating, I wasn't just angry, I was focused. I knew I couldn't just walk away from this marriage with nothing. Not after everything she had done. So I did what she never thought I was capable of. I outmaneuvered her. I hired a forensic accountant, someone who specialized in revealing financial deception, and what they found was astonishing. She had been slowly siphoning money from our joint accounts, covering her tracks by labeling them as business expenses, vacations, with her boyfriend listed as client, networking thousands of dollars in designer clothes, filed under professional wardrobe, even a down payment on an apartment in her name, where I'm guessing she planned to begin her new life after bleeding me dry. And the best part, she had signed everything herself. The judge flipped through the documents, his face unreadable, but I didn't miss the way his eyes narrowed slightly. Mrs. Ella, he finally said, looking up over his glasses, do you have an explanation for these? I turned to my wife, giving her the full force of my calm, unwavering stare. She had always been skilled at lying, but now she was scrambling. This is ridiculous, she blurted out, laughing shakily. He's clearly making things up. I would never, Your Honor. I cut in smoothly. You'll find her signature on every fraudulent transaction, in fact. I reached for another document and slid it across the table. Here is an email where she instructs the accountant to shift money from our business account to her personal slush fund. Her face drained of color. I had been waiting for this moment. You hacked my email. She whispered, her voice barely audible. No, I replied evenly. I simply got access to all business communications, tied to my company, the same company you tried to steal from. The judge exhaled through his nose, his irritation growing. Mrs. Ella, these are serious claims. Your lawyer will have time to respond, but for now, I'm inclined to review the financial claims before ruling on alimony. Her lawyer started speaking too, fast flipping through his briefcase, desperate for an escape, but there wasn't one, not this time. For the first time in our entire marriage, she had no command over the situation, and I wasn't done yet. The boyfriend gets dragged in. I turned slightly, looking over my shoulder, straight at her new boyfriend, the corporate lawyer, the one who had been sitting smugly in the back enjoying my humiliation just minutes ago. Not anymore. His face had gone rigid, his fingers tapping anxiously. Against his leg, I caught his eyes and smiled a slow, knowing smile. Time to bring him into this, Your Honor, I said, standing up. I have one more piece of evidence to submit before we continue. The judge motioned for me to proceed. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. This contains recorded conversations between Mrs. Ella and Mr. Brooks. I gestured toward her boyfriend, whose face immediately went stiff, in which they discussed their plan to bleed me financially before she officially filed for divorce. My wife's head snapped toward me so fast I thought she might give herself whiplash. What? She shrieked. That's illegal. He can't record private conversations. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, all recordings were made in my own home in a state where one-party consent is completely legal. The judge arched an eyebrow before waving for the bailiff to collect the USB. I'll have this reviewed, he said. If it contains what you claim, Mr. Elijah, Then this case just became much bigger than a simple divorce hearing. The blood drained from her boyfriend's face, and in that moment I knew he didn't. No, he had no idea she was planning to take him down with her. Beautiful. I turned back to my wife, lowering my voice so only she could hear me. You thought you were playing me, I murmured. But you were always playing yourself. Her jaw clenched so hard I could hear her teeth grinding. I wasn't the workhorse anymore. I was the man who had just ruined her entire future. The fallout begins. The judge took a deep breath. Given the serious nature of these claims, I will need to review all financial documents and evidence before making any rulings. Until then, all assets remain frozen. Her head snapped toward him in horror. Frozen? She repeated, her voice cracking. Yes, the judge said flatly. Which means you cannot access your bank accounts, your business shares, or any joint assets until this case is concluded. Her hands were shaking now. She turned to her lawyer. Do something, she hissed. He just rubbed his temples, looking utterly defeated. Meanwhile, I sat back down perfectly calm, perfectly composed, and watched the reality of her situation finally set in. She had been planning to walk away wealthy and victorious. Instead, she had just been cut off completely. And her boyfriend, he was already checking his watch, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but here. I glanced at him again, smirking slightly. He wouldn't. Last, she was about to learn just how quickly men like him run when the money dries up. But that was a problem for her to deal with, because for the first time in a long, long time, I had already won. The sound of my soon-to-be ex-wife's frantic breathing filled the courtroom, her perfectly polished exterior crumbling in real time. The judge's ruling to freeze. Her assets had sent her into a tailspin, her carefully curated escape plan unraveling, thread by thread. But I wasn't done, not by a long shot, as her lawyer attempted to stammer out a response, something about reviewing the evidence and reassessing the financial implications. I turned my attention to the man who had helped destroy my marriage. Her boyfriend, the powerful corporate lawyer she had traded me in for the same man who had been so smug when this trial began, watching my humiliation with thinly veiled amusement. Now he looked like he wanted to disappear. I leaned back in my chair, giving him a knowing smirk. Time to apply pressure, Your Honor, I said, keeping my tone even. Before we break for recess, I'd like to make an additional request regarding the financial fraud investigation. The judge peered over his glasses. Go on, Mr. Elijah. I turned my gaze directly toward my wife's boyfriend. As you'll see in the submitted documents, I continued, several of the fraudulent transactions in question are linked to Mr. Brooks. His head snapped toward me. What? He said, a little too quickly. I could practically see the sweat forming at his temples. The judge flipped through the papers before looking at him. Mr. Brooks, would you care to explain why your name appears in these financial documents? My ex-wife whipped around to face him, her eyes wide. She hadn't expected this. She had dragged him into her scheme, but like the greedy fool he was, he hadn't asked enough questions. Your Honor, I have no idea what he's talking about. Brooks stammered. I don't handle personal finances. I smirked. That was the beauty of this trap. He couldn't deny the paper trail. He had accepted money from my wife, likely without questioning it, assuming it was part of a divorce strategy. But now it looked like he was complicit in financial fraud. And for a man like him, a lawyer, that was career suicide. I saw the exact moment he realized it. He shot my wife a look, not of love, not of devotion, of pure betrayal. Ella, he hissed under his breath, his voice low and furious. What the hell is this? She shook her head rapidly, scrambling. Wait, no, this isn't what it looks like. I had to move money around, and I needed to. The judge sighed heavily. I'll be calling for an official forensic audit of both parties. Financial records. If Mr. Brooks was involved knowingly, he will also be held liable. Brooks shot out of his chair. This is ridiculous. I refuse to. You'll sit down, Mr. Brooks. The judge snapped his voice like a whip. Or I will hold you in contempt. Brooks froze. His entire career was suddenly on the line, and Ella, she finally fully understood what I had done to her. Her money was gone, her assets were frozen, and now the man she thought was her upgrade was about to abandon her. I settled back in my seat, my heart steady. My hands relaxed. It was over. She had lost. The moment it all came crashing down, 15 minutes later, after the judge called for a recess, I watched as my soon-to-be ex-wife desperately clung to her boyfriend's arm. Baby, listen to me, she pleaded, her voice trembling. You? No, I wouldn't do this to you. It's just business stuff. We can fix this. Brooks ripped his arm away. You idiot, he hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? She blinked rapidly, tears forming in her eyes. You said we'd be together, she whispered. You said. I said a lot of things. He ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was about to be sick. I didn't sign up to be part of a federal fraud investigation. Her breath hitched. I stood up, adjusting my cufflinks, and walked past them slowly. As I passed, I leaned in just enough to whisper, "Looks like you overplayed your hand, sweetheart." She turned on me, eyes blazing with fury. You think you won? She spat, voice shaking. You think this makes you a man? I smiled, a slow, measured, victorious smile. No, I said, slipping on my jacket. I think this makes me free. And then I walked away while she stood there, broken, with no money, no power, and no one left to save her. Aftermath, a taste of her own medicine. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. I opened it. It was Ella. Elijah, I made a mistake, Elijah, please, I just want to talk, Elijah, we can fix this. I laughed, not a bitter laugh, not an angry laugh, a free laugh. Then, without hesitation, I deleted her message. I didn't need to respond. I had already said everything I needed to say. The moment I deleted Ella's message, something shifted inside me. For the first time in months, no years, I felt light, unburdened, free. The woman who had once held every part of my life in her grip was nothing to me. Now just a name in a court file, a lesson in betrayal. And yet her downfall wasn't over. Because while I had walked away victorious, she still had everything to lose. The aftermath, public humiliation. The next few weeks were a storybook of humiliation for Ella. First came the financial audit. The court launched a full investigation into her fraudulent transactions, and as expected, the evidence was undeniable. She had stolen money from our business-funneled funds into secret accounts and committed outright embezzlement. She wasn't just losing alimony. She was facing potential criminal charges. And then came the breakup. I had already known Brooks was going to cut and run, but I underestimated how fast he would throw her under the bus. Just 3 days after the hearing, his law firm publicly distanced itself from him. His boss made a statement that the firm had zero tolerance for unethical behavior, and Brooks resigned before they could fire him. And Ella, she found herself alone completely, with no boyfriend, no money, and a ruined reputation. Ella's final plea, I expected one last desperate attempt from her, and sure enough, one evening as I was finishing my workout at home in Seattle, she showed up. I heard the knock at the door, steady but hesitant. I considered ignoring it, but then I thought, why not enjoy this? I opened the door, and there she stood, Ella Hayes, once my wife, now just a shell of the woman she used to be. She was still trying to look put together, but there was a desperation in her eyes. Her makeup was too perfect, as if she was trying to mask how miserable she was. Her expensive jewelry was gone, most likely, pawned to survive. And when she spoke, her voice was softer than I had ever heard it before. Hey, she said, forcing a small smile, can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. What is there to talk about? I asked, my voice calm, unreadable. She shifted on her feet, letting out a nervous laugh. Look, I know things got messy. I know we had our differences, but I just stared at her, waiting. I miss you, she finally said. I raised an eyebrow. Do you? She swallowed hard. Yeah, we had so many good years, and I made a mistake. I let things get out of control. I didn't respond. I just let the silence stretch between us. Ella's face twisted slightly, and the act slipped. Her voice turned sharper. Damn it. Can't you just stop being so smug for 5 seconds? I'm trying here. I chuckled. There she was, the real Ella, the one who had tried to tear me down in court. The one who had mocked me for being loyal, for being easy to ride now. She wanted me back. I tilted my head slightly. You don't miss me, I said plainly. You missed the life I gave you. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to protest, but she didn't, because she knew it was true. I have nothing left, she admitted, her voice breaking. No money. No one to turn to. I just need a little help, just until I get back on my feet. I almost laughed at her audacity, but I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my wallet, and handed her a $1 bill. She stared at it. What the hell is this? She snapped. I smiled, consider it my last act of generosity. Her face flushed red with humiliation. You son of a... I shut the door in her face, and that was the last time I ever saw Ella.